you. Good evening. The meeting of the WSESU will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email or text if you can. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue this meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call in accordance with the law.
I just joined the Zoom, I apologize for that.
Quite all right. I will let you in.
Thank you.
And I will also make you a co-host so
Thank
that I
you.
don't have to stare at my screen for
You
the
got it.
entire time. Pardon me, folks. I'll be right with you.
Sorry about
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is just the minutes of November 12th.
that. So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Great job, Jerry. And we will now be moving on to the administrative report, which I know includes 2 new hires, which I got at the last minute. So,
Yes, so we're excited to bring forward 2 new recommendations for hire. As McKinney-Vento coordinator, Jasmine Markin, and as a multilingual learner teacher, Corey Grau.
and I have their CVs here in my hands if anybody would like to look at them. But I would entertain a motion to accept these hires.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Welcome aboard, folks.
Super, thank you very much for that. So for tonight, the administrative report is really a review of the first draft of our budget that Frank is going to provide an overview on. And I'll turn it over to Frank Rucker, business manager.
Okay, I'm just do these and then we'll do this in a bit. Quick couple of documents that you have seen before. Maybe Sharon would mark and I'll come down here, just to get our bearings. So and maybe flip it over to the blue side, because that's the SU. And then this sheet here is, as I say, prior year, 1-page summary of what we, as a board, as a group, approved last year on December 11th. But before we go to that, if we could take a moment to just look at our timeline, where we are and where we need to go. And I didn't keep a copy for myself because it's online, and I'm going to click on that button. There we are. And so you see this evening, November 19th, admin and instruction and grants is our topic. We have a holiday coming up, and then December 3rd is special ed, which as you recall, the majority of our central office budget. We'll also talk about the allocation method of costs, right? So transportation, special education, curriculum assessment, technology, superintendent's office, and so on. We'll talk about the methodology. It's pretty straightforward. The following meeting, December 10, is going to be food service and transportation, along with, hopefully at that point, we have a pretty good idea of revenue sources other than the assessment. So that's things like the grant funding, which is a focused topic this evening. General stuff like interest income and any other special grants. And then, as you can see, a prior year, we voted on December 11. If we feel, the board feels they're comfortable with that, at that point, December 10, we would have had seen all of the components of the SU budget proposal. If we felt we needed more time, the SD board is meeting on the 16th for first draft, and it would be the following evening, Wednesday the 17th, for an SU budget vote. And remember, we're trying to sequence the SU budget in advance of the Vernon and the SD so that they can build the assumptions into the district budgets.
Can I just throw something out? If
Sure.
the SD is meeting on Tuesday, and I'm the only one not on that, I'd be happy to show up on Tuesday. If we wanted to do a vote.
And that's, well, either on the 10th, which is a Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm willing to come to a Tuesday night meeting in order to not have a Wednesday meeting.
I see, yeah, I see, 'cause,
So you guys
now-
only have to go out once.
Now I got you, yes, right,
I
because of the
understand
16th, you're saying, the 16th, that's
So,
terrific.
know that you can ask me to show up on a Tuesday, and then
Okay.
the SU meets, and then the SD meets.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's just a quick reminder, and now the other document that I shared with you, if you look at the bottom of that single page, this is page 1 of 115. This is what you reviewed this time last year in December once we were done our process. I'm sure you remember page 113. But I've only given you the one page, right? Again, just to give you context of what we're doing tonight fits in to the approximately $30 million SU budget, okay? So we've got the single page that is outlining the framework and the way which we're organized and the way we plan here at the supervisory unit. Looking at the expenditures, tonight we're working on that first set of data assumptions: admin, instruction, transportation, which includes diversity, equity, multi-language learner, and so on. That's what we're going to get into in some detail this evening. And then also at the next to the bottom line, above expenditures, you have grant-funded programs. Okay, so of the 4 segments of our budget, that's what we're focusing on this evening. What's referred to as that program 11 on the left there, and then the instruction and support of instruction funded through grants at the bottom. And there you have the current budgets, right? The current budget for the admin and instruction, $6,037,000, and current budget for these are regular ed grant funded programs, $3,300,000. Okay, so in 3 weeks we'll have this page filled out again, and we'll have the 115 pages behind it that gives you all of the detail to whatever extent you're interested. Okay, so now we're going to jump in.
Bryn, can Ben get a copy of this too? Please bring stuff over, so. You're welcome.
Okay. Bryn is actually going to give us an overview. I think there's 2. Of our grant-funded programs. You may recall Paul Smith used to do this for many years in the past, and we're really excited that Paul has done a great job passing the baton. Brent,
I won't pretend to be able to stand in tall shoes. What I will say though, what we know in our classrooms is that you learn best by doing often. And so I guess I want to start the conversation about grants by sharing the news that I got to redo the Consolidated Federal Programs grant, our title grant, 4 different times this spring and summer because of changing regulations and changing legislative actions that kind of had everybody in a tizzy. And each time the Consolidated Federal Programs grant, the title grant, is not like a very quick grant that you do. Careful, Frank, your foot's in the cord.
Yeah, you may not go out.
I was tied up in the technology.
Many hours of balancing and investing and thinking about what programs are going to help support decreasing inequities in our student populations involved in that process. And so I just a little bit, but really it was a great process in terms of learning the ins and outs of what constitutes the CFP grant that comprises a large amount of funding for our multi-tiered systems of support that we presented about last night. So what happened last year is that initially we thought we had normal allocations, so we did the title grant as normal. And then maybe beginning of June, mid-June, it's usually due June 30th, we got news from the Agency of Education here in Vermont that the funds had not yet been released. And to redo the grant just based on any overage that we had from the year before, which was a very small amount. So we did that and submitted it, and then we got notice, I think it was the very beginning of July, right, Frank? That actually all funds were gonna be held. And then we had to redo the grant and resubmit it. And then finally, under pressure, I think our federal legislation passed the grant at the end of July, or released the funds. And so that was iteration number 4. Typically, this grant is passed, before the end of the school year. I think we finally had the CFP passed in about mid-October, mid to end of October this year. So it's been quite a whirlwind of thinking about how those funds are coming in. And that's been I tell the story because it's been a segue as we're working with the Agency of Education again this fall with our budgeting season to try to figure out what the forecast looks like for next year. And probably like any other sector of public service right now, the answer is we have no idea. What I do know is this. They're suggesting that the federal government has appropriated the Title I funds. So those are funds for academic support achievement for our students. However, and this was surprising to me, the census data determines how much our total allocation is per the county of Windham. And while it feels like things are fairly stable here, or even more challenging than ever, when our poverty rate here is compared to poverty rates across the entire United States, we actually have less weighted poverty than we have had in the past. So in other words, the poverty level of many other areas are rising at a rate faster than ours. So the implication for that from the AOE, best guidance they can give us right now, is to count on perhaps 80% of the Title I expenditures that we had access to this year. So it's quite a big reduction, about $300,000, $400,000.
Right.
Additionally, we've been told that they have no idea about Title II, which supports professional development for teachers, Title III, which supports our multilingual learners, and Title IV, which supports well-rounded education for our students. And it's not that they don't want to release those funds, but that's just the reality of what's happening, I think, on the federal and state level, and also the desire to not promise something and not go into a cycle like we had last summer where we're trying to budget and rebudget and rebudget. Of course, it's tricky to not know what our title allocation is, at least from the Curriculum and Assessment Office, when so much of what we do is related to managing the title grant and also funded by the title grant. When we are doing this in November, we won't have appropriations until next April, and then the grant's due next June. And how we then allocate that to the local budget. So we tried to take some conservative measures given what's happened the last couple of years with the CFP grant to load a little bit more of the function of the Curriculum and Assessment Office to be protected by the local budget. So you will see that reflected in the budget, and that was a difficult decision to try to figure out how to balance and manage all of those things. But some highlights of what we're doing with those monies is we're moving our system. We had 6 of our 7 elementary schools see significant gains in reading last year. Some of the highest gains actually in the state in terms of increase of percentage from one year to the next. We've seen really positive increases in our math data. We're leading the way with a coordinated curriculum in both literacy and math, K to 8. We're expanding our programming to pre-K kids to give an early boost and chance. And for the first time, at least in my experience in the district, we now have a dedicated support in our 7-12 system to lead the NEASC recommendations, to institute some of the layers of support that Ben presented about last night for our high school system. So in the Curriculum and Assessment Office, we strive every day to really make the most use of the funding available to have the biggest impact on our system. It's not just us, it's obviously everybody involved in the hard work of all of our teachers and staff and administrators. But what you see reflected in this budget really is the work of the curriculum office, all of the professional development we do in the district, mentoring of teachers, our expanding multilingual learner department, as well as our Office of Equity and Social Justice. Yeah, so I think we'll go through the budget lines, but I just wanted to give that context in terms of what's happening with grant funding. I would add that we've been nothing near the scope of the CFP grant, but we have in the past few years have had the opportunity to apply for many competitive grants, which many of them have been leftover ESSER money. So the grants that paid for our summer camp, the grants that paid for $250,000 worth of additional literacy materials that we bought 2 summers ago for our classrooms, grants that are paying for benchmark systems, for professional development for teachers. These have been competitive grants that we've been very successful at getting. However, there are fewer and fewer and fewer of those coming up at the state level. So while it's nowhere near the impact, it has given us some of that room to continue to offer the scope of programming and materials that we've been able to do without hitting the local budget up until this point. Yeah.
Great overview, super. Okay, well, now we'll jump into some of the detail. There's your copy, and Bryn, feel free to jump in and elaborate as we review. So we're going to pick up the little bit thicker package. I gave you 2. This one is proposed regular ed and grant program budget. That's what Bryn was just providing an overview of in terms of those title grants. And if we go to page 5, that's where the expenditures start. And to give us kind of the bigger picture, maybe keep page 5 handy, but page 25 is the bottom line, and that's where, as Bryn was just giving you the brace for the bad news, total grants down from the current budget of 3.1 million down to 2.5 million, okay? And this reflects what Bryn was just providing an overview for. So down 668,000, and as it has always been, these programs are a high impact. That's why we have the grant funds. You're going to see a similar number in the other package, the other budget, and this is what Bryn also foreshadowed. It's a struggle. We don't like to pass along an inflation rate more than 3% or whatever the inflation rate is. This year, it's unavoidable. We cannot divest of the terrific programs that are getting these results. As educational leaders, we know students are growing. We know that practices are taking hold, and the ability to scale across all of our schools it really is some of the most remarkable turnarounds we've seen in a long time in this system in terms of student proficiency and growth, particularly at the elementary level. And we're, of course, looking forward to it at the secondary level as well. So that's the bigger picture. Normally in this meeting, we do take the time to sort of go through each grant. We don't have to perseverate over every line item, but it will give you an opportunity to ask questions if you have them, but also a sense of what central office manages. And when we are dealing with grants, we are dealing with a labyrinth of rules, federal procurement rules, audit rules, and we've done very well with all of the monitoring requirements that says we are kind of a standard for the state. So here we go, page 5, and Mark as well, and
Yep.
I see we have Ben here. Anyone wants to chime in, please do. I will be fairly quick though with most of these. Fortunately, the PCB, the first one, you'll see in the 1, 2, 3rd column over, that's our proposed budget. It's 0. Glad to see that I believe we're seeing that behind all of our schools. The remediation and testing and so on. Dummerston was the last school, and the SU has to manage that funding and grant and compliance. Title I starts on the bottom of page 5, and this is our single largest grant. It does have a few segments, meaning they break it out into these sub-grants. So, Title I, let's see if I can get my handy reference. As far as our full-time equivalent teachers that are employed by Title I. It used to be about 10 folks, mostly are academic support teachers across all of our schools, K through 8, generally not at the high school. The theory there is once remediation, intervention is successful in the elementary, we hope that we don't have to continue the same types of intervention at the high school level. Just let me take a moment to pull up a summary, and then we can refer to it fairly quickly.
The other position that is in Title I is our McKinney-Vento coordinator, who helps coordinate services for families facing housing insecurity. And that is a mandated set aside. So we do have to reserve money out of our Title I allocation for the McKinney-Vento coordinator, transportation, supplies for students. It's a wonderful mandate. It is an unfunded mandate. There's not a separate pot of money for the McKinney-Vento services. That comes out of the initial Title I allocation.
And that is one of the positions that we had to reduce by 2/10, which we don't like to do, but from full-time to 80%. But that was also with the current coordinator's recommendation.
Yeah, input.
So our new allocation for Title I, I'm showing you. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I'm in the SU budget. So we are still retaining 1.5 positions of the SU based employees in Title I, and then we subgrant most of the funding, about 800,000, a little more than 800,000 of Title I to Vernon and Windham South Beach School District, and they employ the ASTs. And it's funded through this grant. Any other positions, Bryn, that we want to highlight in Title I? It's, as I say, it's other than our academic support teachers for instruction, that is our primary investment. Mm-hmm. So,
One question that might come up for folks, we are also required through the CFP grant to have equitable shares with any independent schools who may have Title I eligible students. So any students who reside within the towns of Putney, Brattleboro, Vernon, or Guilford, Dummerston is not currently a Title I eligible school. who attend an area private school are eligible for some of those funds to travel with them, and we are required to do that cost sharing, that funding share, to provide those services for students at those schools. So if you see some independent school budget items here, that's what that is, and that's required by law.
So on the bottom of page 8, this is what we call the school-wide Title I funding, and it's a subtotal of what we've been talking about. And this is where the $668,000, you start to see the unfortunate consequence of the Trump administration divesting of these kinds of programs, and there you see it down $114,000 for that subset of programming. And then on page 8, there's a specific allocation for the McKinney-Vento. They're not funding that at all, and we're addressing that through the local budgets as well, and to some extent in the regular Title I, right? I believe, yeah. So you see that on page 9, where we go from 30,000 to 0 in that program. Title III is on page 9 as well, and those were a fairly broad criteria for spending, but it was mostly supplies and technology and training. That was the assumption, not funded in the new year. Moving right along.
Frank, when you say not funded, you mean not funded through title, but funded through local?
If we feel that we've met the objective of the grant, then we say, okay, we've met the objective, we no longer need to invest in that strategy.
Okay, so
this one is one of those where we feel that we have, through
No
curriculum
longer.
assessment and through acquisition of our own technology,
Okay.
equipment budgets, supply budgets, that we don't need to shift that one.
Gotcha.
Title IV starts on the bottom of page 9, and then continues through this document for a couple of pages. You
But
can
these
see
are a lot of zeros that we need to overcome.
This is the anticipated funding based on the information that we have
Yeah.
as of right now.
That's nothing.
And I think another addendum to what you're saying, Frank, the intent of title is to supplement the programming that we have, but to not fully supplant what is already in place. And so, to address your question, Carrie, I think the idea is these are extra things that we can provide, extra tutoring, extra services, extra academic support teachers to, instruct our kids. But the intent of title and the legal obligation is to make sure that we're supplementing what's happening, not supplanting. And I think that potentially is part of the rationale of the federal government of saying like, oh, well, that was just extra, so.
Very good point. So Title IV has a pretty broad criteria for spending, and you can see the line items, multiple line items, meaning it starts on the bottom of page 9, all of those line items on page 10, all of those line items on page 11, and then you see the total of Title IV on page 12. So what was a $200,000 grant, we've left $30,000 allocated to that grant, and it's through stipends, but we know that's vulnerable. Brent, in terms of a criteria, would you say our primary investment through Title IV is been the professional development?
Yeah, so Title IV is around a well-rounded education, so those include stipends for professional development and teacher work groups related to social emotional learning, safe and healthy schools, science, social studies, those kind of programmatic health.
So you see how these reductions are adding up, right? 114 in Title I, 30,000 in McKinney-Vento. Here's another $170,000 reduction there on Title IV, page 12. These are all painful assumptions that we have to make based on the current federal administration. Moving right along, we had no surprises about the last of our ESSER grants. So next year you won't see any reference to ESSER funding on page 13, but because we spent money in fiscal year 25, there's the legacy. You do see on like page 13, those were substantial investments, $639,000 in fiscal year 25 for those ESSER funds, but we've adjusted to that in fiscal year 26 and obviously 27 as well. And I think, you know, we can say that we invested those funds wisely. Part of the success that Bryn has been able to share through those graphs and our CIP goal basis, you know, is from those origins of really millions of dollars of services that we were able to acquire.
I'll just add, like in our planning, we're certainly, you know, obviously planning for fiscal year 27, but we're also keeping in mind fiscal year 28.
So,
And that's been a high top concept that we've been working with administrators on, is just seeing the long game and really anticipating what that's going to look like and how the moves we make this year have an effect the year later.
yeah.
I appreciate hearing that very much. Just want you to know that.
So a lot of ESSER grants, page 16, we pick up the Title II grant, which was primarily staff support from an instructional practice point of view, investing in innovative programs that are research-based, known to advance learning and proficiency. And so this is where we had instructional coaching. Our superstar Brian Bittner has been funded through this funding. Again, as you go through this, it's mostly personnel and then some contracted workshops for admin support. And this is where, page 18, we are keeping these programs as a placeholder in this grant. We know that it's unlikely $470,000 on page 18 is to be fully funded. So this is where we want to commit to the programs. We want to acknowledge the value of them. If funding is cut but under $470,000 or down to zero, we're prepared to use the Medicaid reserve that we built up over a few years to fund the most essential programs for at least fiscal year 27. And then, as Mark just said, the hard decision will be in fiscal year 28 if it is final that Title II funding is eliminated, then that's when we would have to reduce the programs. This has been just a terrific support to instructional practice through instructional coach and other supports. So that is the main proposal for this $2.4 million. Maybe the last grant I'll highlight of significance is Medicaid, because I just mentioned it, page 21. Tabby Favreau in our office is another rock star in terms of ability to secure funding that is directly available for programming for our kids. She has been able to take This program, prior to her arrival at the central office, used to be about a $200,000 revenue source for us, and now it's over $500,000. This has been supporting additional guidance, additional support in ASTs in some instances. It's intended to be, it's required to be a general student support. It's not intended to be a supplement to a special education specialized program. It's intended to be a more universally accessible support for students. You see our plan there. Of the $548,000 on page 22, when you look at page 21, you see that a lot of that, most of that is sent to the school districts. So, page 21, you see the three Brattleboro town schools they utilize that for various additional nurse services, counseling, and student support services. The high school, $142,000, Dummerston, $37,000, and so on. And that's all built into those local budgets that we've been talking about with the Finance Committee. And fortunately, that one we're not hearing is on the chopping block yet. That would be another severe consequence if it was. That would be $1 million reduction. At this point, we're not hearing that. But we're not hearing the other side of that, which is an assurance it's intact. So another contingency. We're sustaining our Asian Studies grant and program at the high school for Chinese language instruction, both at the high school and the middle school. Freeman Foundation has been a long time partner in funding part of that program at this point. And there we are, page 25 at our 2.496 budget proposal, and every program in here is funded through a grant. So it does not affect our tax assessments, doesn't affect our local budgets in terms of local funding. So that is your overview, and I'm glad to jump into the admin and instruction budget. But any questions on our grant program? Maybe just one last thing is that this requires every line item in this 25 or whatever it is, 25-page document requires a strategy submitted to the Agency of Ed. The strategy is to meet the criteria of the grant. The Agency of Ed reviews that, and then we'll give Bryn a feedback. Okay, we think this is a valuable and relevant to the criteria of the grant, or no, we don't think so. It goes through a labyrinth of grant management system buttons and boxes. It's not a efficient system, but it is one that assures funding is going to be spent on what the criteria was for, and we really do make it work. Okay.
And I think it's very evident there's a lot that we need to make up in other areas of our budgeting.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
And this is where we show you that.
Yep.
Okay, the smaller set of financial statements. I give you one of those. Yeah. Okay, this is the engine behind what makes all of our systems work, right? Vermont governance structures. Vermont governance structures say if you are a supervisory union, then the supervisory union central office must accept responsibility for budgeting, collective bargaining, transportation, food service, finance, all school operations. If you're a single district, that is all part of your school budget, your single school budget. But as a supervisory union, we're in a different room, obviously, than Windham Southeast School District. That's a different entity, and so is the Vernon School District, different entity. But this is the group right here that we're gonna go over that runs all the operations. So we do the banking, we go find the 100 million that needs to go into the bank, and we push it into those bank accounts. We run those payrolls, we run the transfers to fund tax payments. We file all the reports that generate our revenue and comply with so many laws. And then we do the more important work, or maybe more impactful work, which is support best practice instruction, match theory and practice, you know, and support our learners. Okay, so hopefully it's familiar to most of you, so I'm happy to go through this fairly quickly, but please ask questions as you need. The organization of this is, first few lines will be the revenue assessments that we will calculate once the AOE gives us our average daily membership statistics. I usually don't guess at that at this time. This is typical where we look at the expense side of operating the central office, and then shortly after December 1st, we usually get those statistics, and you will see the impact of the assessment on that first meeting in December. And that's that allocation methodology. And it's very simple. It's basically the proportion of kids at each district times the amount of money that needs to be assessed to run this supervisory union. Pretty straightforward. Here we go. We have a pre-K program. It's going very well at Canal Street. That's on page 1, those expenditures. So Carrie Beebe is doing a great job. You see that this current year we increased that position to full-time from part-time. And then again, we're expanding the scope of services that Carrie Beebe has in having some administrative support or a presence at the Canal Street school building.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have, how many kids?
About 26 kids.
26 kids, so two classrooms, and
Almost doubled our enrollment from last year.
made a nice investment, and we've got a great team over there.
And Frank, I would add to that, which Stacey, I'm sure you could chime in, Carrie's really made a priority to think about pre-K as a bridge to student support and success in our school system. So not just in our pre-K programs like Canal Street and Guilford, but also working with private partners, so students have kind of an equitable experience and foundational access, so that they are really kindergarten ready as much as possible. So she's really taken it on with the extra full-time role to expand that, because we know that early intervention is the key to helping support students. The gaps are smaller.
Thank you. Curriculum assessment. So Brenda's given you the overview, the narrative that we handed out. Brenda's given you a nice overview of that. So I won't repeat that, but this is where on page 3 we look at curriculum assessment, and we look at the increase. This is the shift that we indicated is a consequence of the White House policy of defunding these vital programs. So this retains our curriculum director, and then we have curriculum coordinators at the elementary and at the secondary level, and this proposal retains those services, and we feel that's vital.
Remind me, is that Title II?
This is absorbing costs from primarily Title I.
Title I, okay.
Yeah.
Lost the title.
I will learn my titles again soon.
I'm still learning them here.
Title I is primarily the
Poverty?
the remedial. It's generated by
By
poverty,
poverty, okay.
and it's mainly for the remediation of math and literacy intervention. but there are other components.
Okay, but this is because of the Title I.
Whereas Title II is it's not exclusively, but it's more for coaching. It's more for instructional practice and professional development of the
Okay.
teacher's skill.
Okay.
And we did have a small percentage of the CNA admin funded by Title II in the past in terms of some of the professional development activities, roles, coordination that was involved under Title II. With the projected income of not much in Title II, more of that was loaded into the local.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the first tranche of bad news. Technology coordinator, I didn't actually highlight that in my general overview of what the central office does, but the IT department is absolutely vital in any organization these days. So this is Gary Parzich, who runs our servers, and those servers interact with our school information system, our accounting systems, our email, so much of our data management is based on Gary's ability to stay ahead of the hackers and to also configure systems and keep up with the ever-changing technology environment. So he's done a great job, and you see we're sustaining that investment. We do have an increase in his department on page 4. Under it is a server upgrade requirement, so we generally have 5-year useful life of those, and we're due for a replacement, and that's why on that last couple of lines you see increases in software and hardware. Keep us current. The next group on page 4 is our diversity and equity program. So this is Michaela Sims and Jill Kelly. I'm sorry, Shannon Kelly, yeah. And again, Michaela's been doing a great job. You've heard, I'm sure, Mark report and others report on how well diversity equity programs are being integrated, and Michaela's asking to sustain the program you see on page 5. Really no significant change in that program. It mirrors what she accomplished in fiscal year 25 in terms of the financial resources, and then carries it through this year and next year. So a little bit there for school board supplies. I know that's not a heavily used budget, and that's typically for any kind of board communication, including could be some of the contributions to the annual reports or something like that. Superintendent's office, similar here, where we have sustained the program and the staff. So superintendent, executive secretary. You probably recall last year we talked about adding a half-time support person in the superintendent and HR office. So that is in this budget. And that's why the executive secretary office assistant it's up a little bit more than standard, but it reflects hiring that person and assigning appropriate compensation. Other than that, in the superintendent's office, when we look at the total, page 6 at the bottom, it's a level funded budget, basically, close to the inflation rate, especially when we look at a 7% increase in health. And then we have the finance operations. So this is my own position. We have a director of human resources. We have a benefits coordinator, and then we have which we call an HR specialist, who's very involved in the, as many as 70 or 100, onboarding new hires every year. Many of those are part-time. We don't turn over a seventh of our staff every year, but we do turn over quite a few, and then there's inevitably a lot of part-time substitutes, crossing guards, all sorts of folks that we employ, and that's in that group. And then the accounting, payroll, accounts payable, grants management, and then to some extent the funding and reporting is in that third line of salary data, and that's where we just have stellar dedicated people that keep systems going regardless of the challenges that have faced us. And challenges not only on the professional level with this incredible change in regulatory environment and unpredictability both at the state level and the federal level, but on a personal level where folks are like everybody. We lose family members. There's hardships, and payroll never stops. People expect to get paid every 2 weeks. Cindy is just amazing. She has never missed. Accounts payable. People expect to get paid, right? Every week, every 2 weeks. We run $100 million through this team, and they come out with gold stars every time on the audit. It doesn't just happen. It takes a tremendous commitment and expertise. So can't say enough about that group.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's our finance office. And then on the last page here, we have our facility, director of facility. You may recall this was right after COVID, and there was so much concern about safety in facilities. Do we have clean air? Do we know how to operate ventilation systems? The state required supervisory unions to hire or create a director of facilities. We're so fortunate to have Robert Clark, was with the director of UHS campus facilities for 20 years. He accepted that position. He's doing a great job for us. He really helps inform the capital plan, and he's not a professional engineer, but he's practically got the certification for it. He's very well trained, and I work closely with him on developing the capital plan and keeping our learning environments top notch. So that's what you see on page 7 and 8. Our last program in this budget is the multi-language learner. So Bryn, if you could just give us a quick summary of that, page 9, of that group.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we are still welcoming new students and new families to Brattleboro through the Refugee Resettlement Program and ECDC. And many of the students coming into our ML program are at a level 1 English proficiency. So it's we have a great team of professionals who are supporting those students. We are looking to be down a little bit in numbers of ML students next year, just because of who's coming in and who's graduating. So we did reduce that department by 0.6 FTE next year. And that was a difficult thing because of the level of service obviously wants to remain the same, but the multilingual coordinators, Deb and Jen, were amazing in terms of thinking about strategic ways to really absorb that. So we've reduced a portion of a position there. There's a lot of work happening in terms of direct supportive classroom teachers who have ML students in their classroom to think about differentiation and inclusion practices to really make the core content accessible to all students. So in addition to direct services of students, there's a lot of mentoring and professional development for the teachers who have ML kids in their class, as well as translation services that cost is up considerably, and support directly for families who are coming into the district.
I think one of the final things I say before we open it up to questions is, this little packet represents the core values that I've been touting this year and have put together with the folks who are represented in this spreadsheet. So this represents all the staff on the Green Street, the 3-story white building, central office, and our downtown offices of the hub. So, in my opinion, a remarkably small amount of people to really be the engine behind the school district to make things happen every day, so that things get done for teachers and for children. That's the overview.
Yes, that's the overview there, and you see now on the final back page there, a familiar number that we forewarned you about. Page 10, just above the last line will change when we put the revenues in, the grand total, but the total expenses, you see up 633,000. That's a similar number to the decline in the grant funding. It reflects that all of those, grant-funded positions have been vital and they've had a terrific impact. And we know our programs would not be sustained without the folks that are doing that work. So that's where we are. I do not expect that to have a material effect on our overall district spending in terms of the percent change. So the finance committee at the SD heard our $45 million elementary budget presentation on Tuesday night that included a district-wide assessment and a very rough approximation at 3.2%. Okay, so 45 million, and then this translates usually into somewhere around, you would expect 20% or more just for special ed. So somewhere around 10 million. So this component, it does put pressure on the overall budget, but it will not push us into a territory where I think we're fiscally unsustainable. Obviously, we can't do this every year, but we've had to adjust in years past, and I think we will be able to do it again this year.
So while this number looks horrible, we have to wait for a couple more meetings, and it won't be as bad.
That's my prediction.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
Well,
Yes.
just wanna make sure I'm hearing that correctly.
Yes, you are. Yes. Any other questions?
Thanks for the bad news.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I know you're aware of the bigger picture and why we're in this position,
Yeah.
so appreciate that awareness.
Yeah.
So really sure I don't want to ask any more questions. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit and hope magic occurs between now and when the numbers come out from the state.
Yes, right, yeah, the December 1st yield number, it doesn't affect so much the SU budget, but it absolutely does affect the district budgets, because the districts set the tax rates and they have to calculate the cost per student and compare that to the yield of somewhere around 15,000. So we'll see in a couple more weeks that definition of fiscal sustainability.
Yep.
Okay. I guess we have come to the portion of the proceedings where we will have public commentary on non-agenda items, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of public. Going once, going twice. All right, moving on then. In new business, we have presented 3 policies that have already been adopted by the school district for a first reading. If you have comments, you can pass them back to me or to the policy committee, and I guess then back to the SD board. So I hope everybody liked them the first time. Okay, is there any other business to come before this board? I would now entertain a motion to enter into a proposed executive session under 1 VSA 313A3, the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? We are no action will be taken, so Peter, you're free.
Yes.
And we will enter executive session at 6:03.